Hey everybody, for our friends in China or other Asian areas, good morning. Anybody in US, Europe, thank you for being with us after working hours. And of course, those in Europe, it's super late for you at night. My name is Jonas and it's my big honor and pleasure to be hosting this session about the power of self-managing communities. I've been building communities in Beijing and APAC in the last 7 years, and before in my early days in Germany, been building some youth communities over there. I want to encourage you guys to use the chat as much as you want, ask questions. I want this to be engaging. I told Dan I'm okay if there's an important question that relates to the topic. He has the power to stop me anytime and to say, hey, Jonas, let's address that right now. That fits in. So don't be shy, ask your questions. Also use the chat, introduce where you're based, where you are right now. I'm from Germany, spent 5 years in US and the last 7 years in Hong Kong and Beijing as my bases, and been moving around a lot between Asia and Silicon Valley in the startup world since then. So what are we going to cover? I want this to be actionable. So first of all, I talk about what I call the secret power of communities. I believe communities, or in Chinese we say 社区, is, I think, very much underrated in the business aspect. We all have our community of friends, maybe people we play soccer with a community we go drinking beers with, especially if you're from Germany. However, in terms of business, not so many people are considering, what can I do with my customers beyond selling to them? And this is what we're going to address. And then, of course, the question is how to build, how to launch, and how to grow a community. And in terms of the TEAL concept and self-management, I would like to, in particular, also dive into how to identify and nurture key contributors. One thing that I have done is also to build communities of volunteers. And I've been part of communities of volunteers, same as in the TEAL movement. And I bring you some case studies of organizations such as Startup Grind, Angel Hack, my own company Leadership, and Naked Hub, or Lo Xin She, which is a co-working space that we'll be diving into a little bit more. So community, what is it and how can it look like? It can look and feel very, very different. You can see on the left side, it looks more like a party atmosphere. Or you can see on the right side, a photo of me with 2 friends and clients and partners. That is more a small scale, grassroots movement discussion. And the story I want to start with is the story of Naked Hub. When I moved to Beijing in 2017 full time, I joined a co-working space, and it is called Naked Hub. Yes, maybe you think it's a weird name, Naked Hub. What does it mean? But it stood for very, very clear values. And the values were fresh, fun, green, and great. And those 4 values, they were connected by one thread. And that was a community of entrepreneurs, of change agents, of people who want to have green design. And Naked Hub was standing apart from all the Chinese co-working spaces. And after only 2.5 years, the company was acquired by WeWork for $400 million, which is an amazing exit, especially considering that the founder of Naked Hub is actually South African. He doesn't even come from China. Of course, there were Chinese partners, Chinese investors, a lot of supporters from the China ecosystem. As we know, for foreigners, it's not that easy to 创业, to create a startup here in China. And there, I always believed in the power of community before, but at Naked Hub, I really realized how much of commercial value, of business value is there also when we create community intentionally. And I shared this teaser on the LinkedIn group last night. We all here for more self-management, less shouting top down, but we want belonging, we want dialogue, we want care, we want exchange. And that is what community is all about. Here are a few powerful quotes from a fairly recent Harvard Business Review article. Enthusiastic members help acquire new members. Members are loath to abandon the community. Maybe the word loath is not so familiar to many people. I hope as a non-native speaker myself, I can clarify correctly. Otherwise, then please use the chat. Yeah, loathing means they are less likely to leave the community because you have this stickiness, you have the bond. You don't want to be the guy who leaves, who ditches the community. And what does it mean for our business? That means retention. Another very practical example, this is my 4th year joining the Teal Around the World conference. I started as an attendee, and then I said, this movement is fantastic. Let me be a moderator. And I was a moderator for 2 years. And this year I have the chance to share with you and do my best to even give more value to you guys, part of the community members. And community members supporting each other. And that all adds to what we call that flywheel that adds to our community growth and thus to the growth of our business value that we create, and of course the value we create for society. Cambridge Dictionary defines community as a group of people who have similar interests or who want to achieve something together. And I love the combination of that because I believe it takes both for a community to succeed. So this was my introduction to what community is. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jonas Wolf. Wolf is my real last name. People always asked about that. Before, my social media handle was the Growth Wolf because I believe in positive, purpose-driven growth. But people were thinking Wolf is a social media name, so I changed my social media to the Jonas Wolf. Feel free to connect with me. I may be too old for TikTok, so I think that's the only big platform I'm not on. Anywhere else you can find me. What do I do? I love to help people to grow their influence. This is my mission for this year. I want to help purpose-driven entrepreneurs and creators to channel more of their work and their energy into this world, because I think a lot of us, we might feel like, oh, we are the underdogs, or what I'm fighting for is such a niche audience movement. But for me, it's about to helping the creators, the change makers, to be out there and reach and influence more people. And as so many of us, obviously, I've been in the leadership and entrepreneurship coaching space for several years. One thing I love to talk about is my PATH framework. It's purpose, action, tracking, and happiness. I gave a TEDx talk about it. If anybody's interested, hit me up. I sent you the link. And I'm very passionate about emceeing and facilitating events, both in person and online. Here are a few more impressions of 7 years of community building. The center photo is one of my favorites. I was for 2 years running hackathons in Chinese. 黑客马拉松一个马农的比赛. It's a little bit hard to translate, so I'm helping out the translator here. Something very purpose-driven, very action-oriented, young change makers coming together, creating solutions in usually less than 48 hours. That was purely living my bliss and my purpose. I loved it. I've been doing a lot of events in Beijing, also bridging fitness, health, wellness, well-being together with personal development. We called it a Time to Change event series. And basically, in all my jobs in the last 7 years here in China, Yodo One is a gaming company. We helped them to go from being 200 people offline in an office to being 100% remote and building communities like Pitch Club around their work. Basically, looking back, I realized with all I've done, I've been building communities. I'm honored to be part of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers and Forbes 30 Under 30. And also these are communities. In the beginning, you think, wow, these are some fancy titles. And I'm obviously by now over 30, so an alumni of both organizations. However, these are communities, and even as alumni, they're sticking together and creating massive value. And if you have any questions about that, again, please use the chat and ask me anything. So what is the secret power of communities for me? And you can see I'm trying to speak fairly fast because I want there to be a lot of space and time at the end for us to engage and just to jam together, answer your questions, and maybe even look into some case studies. You can share about your company and we can discuss together how you could create a community around that. So for me, utmost important, deeper connection. For me, connection is one of my core values in my life. I guess it's fair to say I live and breathe for connection, and I've experienced that so much in communities. By the way, I also experienced community burnout. At one point, I realized I'm in too many communities engaged, and I had to cut back. And that is painful to realize, right? But maybe that's part of my personality. And of course, everybody goes through their own struggles. At first, I thought it's beautiful, all these communities, but then there's so many demands, right? So as always, got to be intentional. Create a purpose. Well, if we have a shared purpose, of course, we get more inspiration from other people and our own purpose grows even deeper roots. And from business perspective, there's an increased customer lifetime value. If you're building any apps or you're in the tech business, people are always talking about not transactional one-time purchases, but what is our lifetime value? And of course, same for car dealerships and traditional industries. We want our customers to be coming back, right? But let's stay with the example of buying a car. How often do people buy a new car? Maybe every 7 years, maybe every 5 years, maybe every 10 years, right? So it really, really depends. But how can you engage with the people? And of course, car dealerships, they often do these open houses or summer parties, right? And these kind of tools of also community building or engaging with customers have been around for a long time. Yet today, also with the help of technology, we have so many more means to stay connected and build these meaningful relationships. And I believe that communities can not only create more lifetime value, I very much believe that communities can be your competitive advantage. And there's a concept in the startup world. Again, I'm mentoring and coaching a bunch of entrepreneurs in China, in APAC, and a bit in Europe at this point. There's a concept called a moat. And a moat is also maybe something that a lot of people are not familiar. And so I figured I'd bring you an image and a definition of a moat here from Beijing, the capital of China. Many of you probably have heard of the Forbidden City. Or if you visited Beijing, most likely you have visited. It's the place where the emperor used to live for most part of the year. And as with many castles in Europe, there is like a small lake, or so to say, bigger river, whatever you want to call it, around it. And if you look at images of European castles, so many had these waterways around the castles. And of course, that is one way to defend yourself. And to defend back then, your castle, your fortress, whatever we call it, and have some space maybe to ordinary people in the case here of the Forbidden City. And the same can be applied for startups and in fact, of course, for any company. So the last couple of years, this word has been used several times in startup terminology. What's your moat? What is your number one thing, how you stand apart from your competition and kind of be guarded, right? And in China, for example, it could be your government connection, right? That is a moat, and that might last for many years. I believe in the early days, for example, Alibaba, that probably a lot of companies are familiar with, or here in China, of course, Taobao as the flagship product, I believe had in the early years a massive moat and government support. Well, then the political climate changes, and that moat has been removed massively. And well, Jack Ma is not living in China right now, but we don't need to talk about that. So also here, moats can come and go. And I believe in the power of community as a moat, because that is something you can nurture and you can control, because technology can change, right? Everybody observed in the last months, ChatGPT taking over so many tasks, so many industries. Everybody talks about it. Sometimes I want to close LinkedIn when I'm like, wow, my LinkedIn feed, 20 more posts, right? Okay, I got the message. Give me something new. And so technology can change, right? Government agendas, directions can change. Global policies can change and needs can change. However, I believe that community is one of the stickiest things, and that is actually easily to defend. So for those who are not that familiar with communities, well, it's all about bringing people together. And that also means we need to engage them. And so here an image from HubSpot. HubSpot is, of course, all about inbound leads and inbound business. And again, I believe community is just that, because naturally when people are engaged in your community, when they love the community, they will be bringing in more and more people. Here are a few teasers. This is not something that is only discussed in niches. I mentioned earlier the Harvard Business Review article. Here is an image from McKinsey, which talked about marketing and how actually they also see the big trend of community, where you engage and what they call you solve for influence. I don't want to bore you with the whole McKinsey article. I share the link here. And by the way, for anybody in the LinkedIn group or in the China-based WeChat group, I'll be sharing all these slides. So no worries, of course, screenshot, take photos, but I will be distributing to everybody who would like to reference them. So not going through all of this. Basically, McKinsey talks a bunch about communities. I actually think maybe McKinsey's maybe not the most qualified to talk about it, to be honest. No offense if anybody used to work for them or works for them right now. My takeaway is, or my opinion is here, is to better create your own community or be a co-creator of one. Like many people have been coming in and out of the teal movement. I don't need to create my own teal community. Bianca Yin, who I just had a chance to meet for the first time in person, and who I call a friend now, we met through the teal movement, and she didn't need to create something new. She said, let me bring together all the L&D people and all the teal fans and people interested from China. And same for me, I love the teal topic. I don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we can join a community and add value. And I think that is really, really, really beautiful. And of course, we can also find our own niche and create our own sub-community, what I'm, for example, doing with leadership. And so how does that cycle work? I mentioned the concept of a flywheel earlier. Well, obviously, it starts all as strangers. We don't know other people. Most people here probably didn't know me before. Maybe some people hear my name or see my face in some kind of group, right? Or some kind of online post, right? But that's about it. So we need to remove that friction, right? And that implies for business cycle, but same as for community cycle. And how does that work? I love events. I have loved events for a very, very long time. And I think it's so powerful when people like, for example, Bianca or myself, we share on our social media channels and we say, hey, this global event is happening.
And for our China-based audience, we are providing translation so you can listen in your native language for some of the key sessions. And so now this year, there's more than 100 change makers from China who are joining this global conference. And hopefully next year, we can have more speakers from China, that we also have even more diverse and holistic global perspectives. And that is the power of community. It needs a few people who can pull in more people, right? And that's what happens organically and in a self-managing way when we build enough connection and add enough value, right? And that is what I call is the heart of that growth engine, right? Because it's all about engaging. Some of you guys listened to the session of Keith Ferrazzi, who works closely or works still closely with Zappos, and Tony Tse, which of course is a very inspiring change maker. And Zappos and Amazon, these kind of companies, they always talk about delighting your customers. And that's the same. So a question I want to ask you guys is, think about it in your business, or if you already have a community, or if you're going to build a community, in what ways can you delight your members? Maybe that's a luxury treatment. For example, when I've been running the Time to Change events in Beijing, for half of them, we chosen to invest in a partnership with a 5-star hotel in Guomao, Beijing, which is the downtown. We of course we charge ticket prices, but we spend all of that money on the hotel because we want to cater that amazing experience. And so for us, we didn't only do a personal development conference. No, as I said earlier, we combined it with fitness and wellness, and we used their 5-star gym facility and their 5-star saunas. And so we could create an 8-9 hour event where people could really bond, learning together, networking, sweating together, and then refreshing, taking a shower, and then sweating in the sauna again, and then taking another shower, and then eating again together, sharing a meal and bonding even more. So basically the event, yes, some people stick around for 10, 11 hours, and that builds community, that builds deep connection. And for the next event, of course, there are people then who will invite and bring their network and their friends if you add that value, if you delight people. And Jono Bacon wrote a great book about community. I have it in the slides coming up, so you can write down the title. This is a quote from him: "A community that is to a large extent self-managing has multiple benefits. The most obvious, which is cost and leverage." And I think this is self-explanatory for everybody in the teal community here. We don't need to say that. We all know that. So then it's about how can we build those communities? I'm also curious, I would love to hear who of you guys actually has their own community right now. Maybe use the chat. Those of you who are on screen, raise your hand. Anybody of you guys have their own community that you're already cultivating? Bianca is nodding, okay. Sylvain, right? Not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. Okay, Chabuduo. Cool, amazing. Love to see that. And how about in the chat? Zoe, yes, amazing. All right. Wonderful. Everybody else, again, feel free to share, ask those questions, and so on and so on. I don't follow the chat all the time, but Dan will keep me posted. Thank you for that. So people ask me often, right? Again, community, right? Such a weird concept. Community can be anything. It can be in China, the eyes meeting downstairs. Eyes are, well, a lot of people can be eyes. I don't need to get into that. It can be people meeting in neighborhoods. It can be people meeting for sports, right? Watching soccer together. There can be so many things that you build community around. My uncle invites people for every Formula One race, and people are showing up at 3 a.m. if the race is on another side of the world. and people are just, you know, watching, right? Having a barbarian breakfast with it in the middle of the night. So how can we approach the topic of community for our businesses? Point number one, I think very important are systems, because as with all things teal and self-management, we need rules, right? We need to know our behaviors. We need to know how we want to function. And I will share a beautiful example of Startup Grind later, which built this massive community all around the world, chapters in 200 plus cities, and millions of participants over the years in the community. And they have, for example, very clear handbooks. I believe the same is for onboarding. What happens when new community members are joining? And also for your teams, for your volunteers, for your contributors. Hey, Cameron, buddy, good to see you. Good morning to Refei. Next is
Hi, Jonas.
hey, brother. Next is an engagement. Yeah, like, how do we want to engage? You can also formalize processes about, again, for example, in a digital space, you utilize a Slack group or Discord channel or, you know, Circle or whatever tools are out there. And what happens? Maybe there's some semi-automated onboarding. Maybe there's automated messages, or a community messenger reaches out to everybody. I will launch a podcast in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm really interested to learn more about the space of YouTube and growing my influence also there on a global level, especially as I've been in China the last 7 years. And it's time for me to go back out global, because I care about connecting the dots more after being stuck here 3 years with COVID. I really missed it, and to be global. And I spent 6 weeks last year in Silicon Valley, and was so amazing to be reconnecting. So I joined this community talking about like YouTube and YouTube growth, and it was amazing. The founder of the community added me directly 101, and he asked me, hey, Jonas, welcome to my community. What are you here to learn for? And that was such a beautiful, warm welcome. And I think we all can learn from that. Same when we open this room, Dan is our host here. So Dan said, hey, welcome, right? It's great for you guys to join. I see my friend Cameron tuning in from his busy workday. And I say, great to see you, right? Because I'm excited for him to be here. By the way, it's his birthday today. So happy birthday, Cameron.
Thank
Even
you.
more special.
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's my birthday today. Yeah.
Next is ownership, right? I think a community doesn't work without ownership, because especially if you run a community where you have volunteering contributors like in Teal around the world, people need to have ownership, and that need to be very clearly defined in the beginning. Another concept I believe in very much is a gamification. I think gamification is freaking cool. I look so forward for there to be a beautiful tech app that actually perfectly gamifies community. I don't think this exists yet. There's few people that tried it. There's one internet entrepreneur that tried it, tries it, building a community management system with gamification. It's called school.com, SKOOL.com. They have a gamification system, but I didn't see it much. And I would love to see something where maybe even integrating Web3, blockchain, right? Where you can reward people for their contributions, ordinary community members, but also the moderators, the facilitators. And I think there's so much potential there. And if anybody is working on that, or you know anybody working on that, please have them reach out to me. I have a lot of ideas in that direction. I think gamification is maybe something we can talk in Q&A about it. Other key areas I want to just briefly highlight, also being conscious of time, storytelling. And I want to dive into a very small case study. One company that I worked with running hackathons, innovation programs is Angel Hack. And one thing that is tech communities are very famous for, and you see it all around, is swag. Let me see, what do I have around? I do believe I have a bit of swag. Okay, this may be not the best example. This is American Express. but also American Express tried to engage with the startup community. Certain startup event, their representative was there, brought this cup, right? My beautiful Chinese teacup that I have forever is my Naked Hub cup, because I loved so much working with that company. Even it was acquired in 2018. Well, trust me, I moved 5 times since, and this cup has always moved with me because it's a beautiful memory. So tech people love swag, and I believe everybody who is deep into a community, and as long as swag isn't junk, right? I think a lot of us are more minimalistic. They will still appreciate it, right? A lot of people love mascots. Just think about it. Just some teasers for you to take away. So Angel Hack, I could talk for 20 hours about how we build communities with Angel Hack. We had a beautiful ambassador program where hundreds of people around the world lined up to apply. When I was working in a co-working business in Naked Hub and building communities and building partnerships with chambers of commerces and government entities, startups, of course, and so on, I wanted to dive deeper into the tech world, because I know I'm not a techie, but I very much admire everybody who codes and creates value that way. So I learned about the Angel Hack community, and I actually started applying to be an ambassador. And actually Angel Hack called it the Ambassador program. So it has a really cool, catchy name. I still love it today. You can see the Ambassador on the t-shirt. And that photo was taken at one of the retreats. Angel Hack was running annual retreats in 3 parts of the world, one of North-South America, one for MENA, and one for Asia Pacific. And we brought the volunteers together. And yes, there are budget concerns. So you said, hey, people pay their own flight. However, we cover all the other expenses. And what happened, we had this amazing community of volunteer organizers all around the world. I loved it so much. Just a couple months later, the company asked me to become their China manager. And later I rose to be their APAC director. And we created so much value. Again, if anybody want to dive really deep, happy to do so, happy to chat about it later on. Here's the book I mentioned by Jono Bacon, probably one of the leaders in terms of community building out there. Also, again, talking about self-management, right? How can you manage things? There's your core of the community, and he advises the core of the community to nurture the regulars, and the regulars to nurture the casual visitors, and the casual visitors to nurture and bring in more people. And again, all of this adding to the flywheel. I just want to go another 6 minutes, so we have 20 minutes at least for Q&A. I got to remind myself here, too excited to talk about this topic. Yeah, so Angel Hack's ambassador program, here's one iteration of it. Here's one version of it. A network, build communities. The ambassador program brought a lot of people opportunities. Some, like myself, even within Angel Hack, even though it was not intended for me in the beginning, I just fell in love with it. But a lot of people landed jobs at technology partners. Like we annually ran global programs with Amazon's AWS, with IBM, with some of the biggest blockchain projects ever created. And so naturally opportunities developed. Network, and of course, there's a lot of reward in building communities for the sake of building communities, just because it is something so deeply bonding when you have a shared purpose and a shared mission that you fight for. The program was also later launched as a student ambassador objective. So here are some screenshots from these days, maybe inspiration for some of you guys. And another question that I've been asked many times is, in fact, when I was running Angel Hack in APAC, I had 56 volunteering ambassadors and contributors beside me and behind me and in front of me and all around me. And it was really, really beautiful, but also at times challenging, because of course, if people are volunteering, they also have needs, right? And that's why I say it is very much about nurturing people, no matter if that's volunteers or if that's for your own team, right? Because of course we had a paid core team, and then we had, let's say, I called it my army of ambassadors. And together we were just really, really, really powerful. And so in every city, we had different city chapters and country chapters. We well, people kind of, I think for the most part, naturally rose as community leaders. And also people who are deeply in the startup ecosystem, like founders, for example, we empower them to scout and nurture and promote new volunteers. And so a lot of weight was taken off my shoulders as a China country lead and later as an APAC lead, because we had this decentralized, very much trusting structure where we had leaders in every city. So the most I was engaged was with the Beijing community where I lived. And we done a lot. Here are examples of social time. I invited people to my office. We offered people career coaching sessions. We invited people for free to events. These are standard perks, but we also taken people to eat a Chinese hot pot together. And of course, that is something very bonding, where you have this big pot and everybody cooks their veggies and their meat and so on together. We taken people on hiking trips, right? And I think that is really, really, really important. And also to use technology to give shout outs and really recognize people publicly. And that is for your core team members, but also external people. For example, Kamran, who tuned in here earlier, he was one of our judges because he's a technology executive. And so we invited him back in 2018 as a judge to our hackathon. Well, we are friends until now, and we see him here tuning in on his birthday, which is beautiful. And so, yeah, prioritize, spend time on key contributors, and have them in mind. They might even want to join your organization as full-time staff later. A few no's before we're wrapping up here.
Here's a Jonas.
You guys enjoy that cake over there. Don't make me hungry, my friend.
Here with my team.
Beautiful. That's Yahao. Hello from Beijing. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Okay, I gotta continue here. A few no-goes, right? I think the teal group of people, I think, is very loving and wholehearted. And I don't think these apply for you guys, but I think they must be said. We've seen it a few times also in different community forums. People talk about it. Hey, actually, I left a community that had a beautiful mission and core, but maybe the founder of that community or salesperson was desperate to reach a quota or goal. And then later this person, let's say after one story I read the other day, after a beautiful retreat a person experienced, the person was contacted over and over and asked, why didn't you buy the upsell? Why didn't you buy the whatever high ticket coaching package after that retreat, right? So never push contributors or participants, right? Don't cross professional boundaries. Yes, it can happen, right? Maybe in some way, I can be very transparent here, right? I had feelings with one of my community contributors at one point, right? And we discussed it. I was like, wow, I really like you so much. And I said, but I don't want to cross these boundaries, right? So we had a chat, we talked about it, and we said, hey, we love working together, right? And we didn't want to risk that. So we said, there's no point for us to discuss dating or anything like that, right? But if you're so close, these kind of things can arise, right? Again, I noticed it myself. So when this happens, right? Talk about it, right? In this case, the feeling was actually mutual, but we realized this is not for us, right? So conversations, as always, solve things. And of course, clearly never manipulate or take advantage of people, right? There are some people who are very good-hearted, who contribute to communities, and maybe they're very broken inside of them. And maybe they actually, you don't take advantage of them, but maybe they're giving too much into the community. Maybe they're sacrificing, right? This is about mental health. This is about watching out for people. and even not subconsciously take advantage of a volunteer or contributor, right? But it's like, hey, I can see you actually doing not so well, right? Let's talk about it. Or like, wow, you're doing so much for us. This is beautiful. But, are you taking care of yourself, right? Or what are your needs? Or do you have any struggles that you maybe want to talk with me or somebody else about, right? Again, these points obvious, but I think we always should be aware to pay attention to these, right? Again, I had my own state of community burnout before. So here's summary. No need to talk much about it. You guys can review that when you see the slides later. I on purpose chosen very wordy slides so you guys can have them as a handout. Example I want to talk about here for a minute is Startup Grind. That was the community I fell in love with in Beijing in 2016. I came here to study a bit of Putonghua, Mandarin, as I was amazed by the Chinese culture when I lived in Hong Kong. And my one objective coming to Beijing was to learn more about Chinese culture. Second was I wanted to meet the Chinese startup ecosystem. Well, I met the organizer of Startup Grind Beijing, who just launched or relaunched a chapter in Beijing in 2016. And they shared these values: make friends, not contacts, give and don't take, help each other and don't help yourself. And these values are so powerful, and Startup Grind never changed them. And they made me to be a part. I was a BD manager for Startup Grind, getting partnerships and money in. I was a community manager. I'm moderating WeChat groups, like chat groups. I was moderating panels and events. I was bringing in speakers, right? I organized cross-community events and conferences. I've done so much with them. And during COVID, I decided I step out of being an active contributor and I'm a mentor to the team, right? A community mentor, because people have challenges, right? And so I'm still involved in a small volunteering function because those values are so strong. And that's in community engagement for me since 2016, so quite some time. So I hope that this was inspiring and insightful to some extent. And I'm curious if community will become your personal or your community mode, your company mode, sorry. Here, another prompt for you for the takeaways. This community brings together, well, who? So we can, our why. What can we achieve together? What is our big shared mission? Think about that. Again, if anybody want to talk about their specific example, please let's use the remaining 20 minutes. Here are a few starter questions by startup venture capital builder Lolita Taub, based in US, and her mission is to connect the US and South American startup ecosystem and be empowering here. Take them away. And here's some more impressions of our Angel Hack and Pitch Club communities that I built and ran over the years. So how does your community look and feel like? And last but not least, I was also asked before to speak about Web3 communities and DAOs. I'm not a complete expert. I love the field, but I don't know enough about it. I think it's very, very interesting. There's a ton of potential. And so we will be seeing a lot of shift from Web2 companies to Web3 companies, and the same applies for communities. So very excited about the future ahead. Maybe next year we'll be speaking about that. And very last but not least, I want to give a shout out to Frederic Laloux, which everybody here knows. Scan this QR code. He launched a very beautiful new movement about the environment. He shared about it in the teal circles. I just want to amplify his mission because he started the launch of the beautiful teal movement and global teal community that teal around the world is a key part of. And I believe his new mission and venture called The Week, I believe will also be a beautiful and very impactful and much needed community. So yeah, here's a screenshot from his video. What did you do to save our planet? It's one of the questions he asked, right? He said 20 years, 10 years down the line, our kids will ask us, hey, what did you know about the environment, right? And what did you do about it? And I think our generation, we need to wake up And the next generation, I think, will be way more confronted with that. So shout out here, and excited also to learn from this newly created community. So now let's discuss, guys. Please, any questions? Let's kill it.
Jonas, thank you so much for the inspiring talk on community. To the audience, we would love to hear from you. If you look in the chat, there is a link for Mentimeter so that we can display the questions live as they come up. If you click that link, if you need the code, those are both in the chat. I'll display those for all of us, and that way the conversation can unfold in the chat, but we're isolating the questions. So we're starting to get some of those. Jonas, the first question is, any difference you noticed when building and leading communities in the United States versus China?
Good question. Let me think about it for a second. I don't want to be too biased. I lived 5 years in the US. For me, I think in China, here I'm a foreigner, right? My Chinese is like Iban Ban. I speak some Chinese, but it's not good enough. So I'm mainly around the let's say I call it the global Chinese, right? Communities, right? And I would love to one day speak perfect Chinese and read my favorite book ever, Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu in its origin in Chinese, right? I listened to it and read it like 16 times in English, but at one point I really want to get there. So that being said, the communities I built here in China, I believe they are more sticky and even closer than in the US. I think in the US, it's often a bit fleeting. You know, people come in and out. Even I was very surprised when I went to Silicon Valley last fall. I went to a Startup Grind event, and there was the founder, Derek Anderson. And I was like, wow, there will be so many Startup Grind like groupies, right? Like big time fanboys like myself, right? To meet the man, the legend, million people community creator in person, right? And actually, I didn't feel so much connection, right? Even it's his home turf, right? He lives like in whatever, Palo Alto, right? And the event was in San Francisco, so everybody should know him there, right? But it wasn't the same connectedness. It was more like, oh yeah, we have a lot of reach, and a lot of kind of semi-strangers come together, and a few people knew each other. But here I think there's this core which sticks together, right? And again, that's what Jono Bacon talks about. It's that core that can then bring in other people and re-engage and reiterate, because you need to create these shared experiences, shared moments. I also saw like a question, I think, in the chat about connection, right? And a lot is about shared experiences. And so you need these regulars that can convey values and oh, before it was like this, right? Think about it. I don't know if you guys did this, but like, for example, my family and I in Germany, where I grew up, we went to these, let's say, something like Christian summer camps, right? And it was often about like, oh yeah, and last year we did this, and last year there was this speech, and there was this and that, right? So people were like kind of from one generation to generation filtering things down. And I think this kind of storytelling and connecting the dots is really, really, really important in communities. And that's why I think it's so important. I also call it like an inner circle, right? I mentioned earlier these time to change events I ran for a big part of 2021 and early 2022. I created something of an inner circle of people very close to me who I know believe in me, believe in my mission, right? And I gave them free admission or massive discounts, right? We had big bills to pay for 5-star hotels. So was some budget concerns, but I was like, hey guys, I really want you to be here. Actually, I need you to be here, right? And especially, I think a lot of people might also wonder how to launch communities, right? Hey, share what you need, right? Be vulnerable, right? Hey, this is me right now. This is my dream, my big mongxiang, like we say in Chinese. And so I think it's really important, like reach out to people that you believe that or that you know believe in this as well, right? And say, I need you to help me launch this, right? And that's how we can grow it, right? Like it starts with the seed in our heart, and then it grows, right? But we need people to, have branches and bear fruits, right? And the fruits drop, and then new trees grow. Like another concept for growth that I love is what I mentioned earlier: city chapters, Startup Grind, Angel Hack. a lot of very powerful communities. Or James, hello, I read in the chat, you're a fellow shaper, wonderful. It's also based on city chapters, right? And that's a very powerful community out of the World Economic Forum. Hope that answer was sufficient. Otherwise, any follow-up, hit me up via social media. Dan, next question, please.
Yes, we've got a wonderful question on Mentimeter, Jonas. It says, I want to start a community for people to heal their trauma and other psychological problems by creating stories. What kind of community channel do you advise?
Wow, that is such an amazing and beautiful topic. And actually, I spent all of last year doing fairly little work, but going deeply down my psyche and past and trauma. So I think there's something very much needed, right? So the purpose is very clear. Whoever asked this, and I think it's a very beautiful mission. So you have a big check mark there. The next question I would ask myself is, who do you want to help, right? Who do you want to help on their healing journey? And same with startups and, products being created, no matter digital or, Volkswagen, a new car, whatever, you have your customer persona, right? And I like this idea of having a community persona. I'm not sure if I had it in one of my slides or if I dropped it at the end. Have your community persona, and again, in this case, these people would also be your target clients, so to say, right? And I think it's at the core, you have your clients, right? And you work with them one-on-one or in a cohort or group setting, right? And then around that, you build your community and you build events and you can empower people. Often also like past clients can become your community members because you change them, you help them transform their life and they believe in your work and your mission, right? So naturally they want to be a part of your movement, right? So think about it, who is it really for? Maybe somebody in your industry, for example, somebody in Beijing who I know here was a lawyer for a long time. Then he went into mental health and he's offering now mental health programs for lawyers, right? Which makes his community very clear because there's, again, a shared understanding of each other. We are all lawyers. We all know each other's struggles, right? And people have already kind of similar professional beliefs, how we were trained and shaped by society, right? Thank you for the question. Wonderful. Love these questions.
Thank you, Jonas. We have one from earlier in the talk that came up in the chat that's actually quite a good segue from the previous question. James asked while you were presenting, how can we create deep connections in community?
Great question as well, James. I mentioned earlier, I think the key thing is shared experiences. And also, I think sometimes we need to help to facilitate bonding and connection. This applies, in my opinion, both in the core team of a community, no matter if it's volunteer or paid team or whatever, and also in the larger community. So a lot is about facilitating and connecting because people come, they drop into communities. So first, again, onboarding. What's the welcome? How are you welcomed? How are you introduced to the community? And what's your first impression? Like we say, first impression matters, right? Last impression sticks with you. So how are you being introduced to everything that is happening? And then who is welcoming you? For example, Startup Grind Beijing, we had at one point a team of 30 volunteers and contributors in just Beijing, in just one city, which was amazing. So at any Startup Grind event, there were, let's say 100 participants and another additional 15 volunteers. So 15 volunteers, yes, one is in charge of technology, one is in charge of the speaker, one is the host, right? One is checking admission ticket, one is in charge of F&B, but then there's another 10 people which can go out and engage, say, hey, why are you here? What brings you here? What's your struggle at work? What do you want to learn at this talk, right? And then we had our networks and we're like, hey, I can introduce this person, or actually there's somebody here. And because we made these connections in person or also at online events, right? if we all here would meet in this room, talk about community once a month, after like 3 months, we would probably all know each other. We would all know who is who, what's your struggle, right? And then when somebody new comes, then I or somebody else can say, hey, there's this person, right? And that's when the magic sparks are happening. You add massive value for the new joiner. You add value for the connector, because there's also an intrinsic happiness reward from that. But also beyond that, right? Let's say in startups, I'm being approached now by people say, hey, I'm fundraising. Do you know any investor in this field? Well, I'm of course very happy pay you like a 2% FA fee, right? Or like a blockchain project. Hey, let me drop you some tokens, right? So again, we are moving to a world where it's also easier and easier in the future to give shared value. Sorry, I don't want to be too wordy. Let's see if we can get another question in here.
I think we might have time for one more. So another question in Mentimeter, Jonas, was, what will be your key advice for communities embedded in an organization to keep moving toward the community purpose and get traction to have new members that contribute?
Okay, can we simplify that? Basically, the second part is traction, and what's the first part?
The first part is key advice for communities that are embedded inside of an organization. So creating a community with a purpose inside of a greater organization and getting traction within that community.
Absolutely love it. I'm a big fan of that. I think it works even for all kind of companies. For example, one company that is doing that quite well is, for example, IBM. Yes, IBM, quite old-fashioned, old-school company, but they have a beautiful community of contributors to their products and customer feedback groups. Another company that is very famous for this is Salesforce. They have a massive community, and I believe Salesforce is one company where community was one of their core contributors to, by now, right, owning the biggest building in San Francisco, being very iconic there. I think this can be kind of played from various angles. One is like, sorry to say, top-down, founder-led, that the founder says, hey, this is the direction I want to go. I believe in community. I want to see this coming up. Or it can be totally grassroots, and it can be like 5 people jamming over a lunch session and saying like, hey, I have this idea. Well, our company doesn't have a, doesn't do anything for our mental health or well-being. Hey, I did this mindfulness certification online, and hey, well, I really love sound healing, and I want to learn more about that. How about we start a small practice in our company, right? So it can start from that way. I have people I know in German automotive companies in Beijing, and they started their own fitness community, right? People start their philosophy club inside a company. Or let's say you are in a traditional automotive company 3 years ago and you believe in electronic vehicles, right? Hell yeah, you gather all people around you. You build in so much momentum until you reach the CEO. For example, like at Naked Hub, literally when I joined this co-working space, like not even 1 week after joining, I think my day 2 or 3, I sent an email to the CEO and the founder of the company, and I said, we'll be hosting this Startup Grind event. I actually need you here because I want to build more community in Naked Hub. I was hired as a sales and partnership manager, but I believed in community so much, and I became the key. I was never in a community management role for Naked Hub, but everybody came to me for community roles. And later I wrote a post on LinkedIn about what is Naked Hub, and it's still out there as an article. And the CEO of Naked Hub commented, was like, wow, Jonas, this is so amazing. You wrote this article, you're doing so much for our community, blah, 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 right? So it's about, again, ownership. If you want to achieve something, just do it, just start it. And again, traction, again, community is fucking hard. Community is not easy at all. It takes a lot of sweat. It takes a lot of heart, especially, right? Again, especially if you have like 56 volunteers. I am close friends with many of them until now. Some of them still contact me now and say, Jonas, I have a struggle. Can we do some career mentoring, right? And until now, years later, many of them you just help out for free. And some of them also say, hey, Jonas, I earn good money now. I'm very happy to pay you, right? Don't be shy to ask me for that, right? So it's really like a very long-lasting bond, right? But it's always give and take. You can see my company logo. I have the yin-yang symbol there because I believe in balancing and flowing so much. And that's the spirit of community as well. Unfortunately, guys, I think we reached our time limit. For those in China, my QR code is on screen. That's my WeChat QR code. On all Western social media, it's the Jonas Wolf. Feel free to hit me up. Yeah, I'm very passionate about people launching their ideas, their ventures, what their burning desire, their purpose is in them, helping people grow their influence, building communities that are impactful, and of course, what we are here for together with Teal, like what's the next level of leadership. That's it from my side. Love to connect and blessed to have you all here. Thank you guys so much. And Dan, thank you for hosting. Wonderful.
Jonas, thank you so much for a great talk. There was so much wisdom in this about community. Audience, thank you so much for being here. Although the talk has now ended, the conversation does not need to end. In the chat, you will find a link. You are all invited to join the spatial chat, join the room fire pit. Please keep the conversation about community and Teal going throughout the day. Thank you all so much, and most thank you to Jonas.